Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe and welcome back to another video during our spooky season here. And so in light of that, we are going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of a parapsychologist from back, more well-known back in like the 80s, 70s, around in that time. His name is Hans Holzer. More on him in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll that intro first. Okay, so if you are like me and you did not know who Hans Holzer was before this video, here's a bit of backstory before we dive into the analysis portion of it. Hans Holzer was born on January 26th, 1920 in Vienna, Austria to Martha and Leo Holzer. Due to his family being Jewish or of Jewish descent, they immigrated from Austria to the US around 1938 due to increasing danger under Nazism. While in Austria, Holzer studied archaeology and ancient history at the University of Vienna, and after immigrating, he continued his education focusing on Japanese at Columbia University. Along with this, he did claim to have earned a master's in comparative religion and a PhD in parapsychology from the London College of Applied Science. However, I was not personally able to track down any evidence to verify the existence or accreditation of that specific institution, though a bibliography from the literature site Goodreads possibly attributed the advanced degrees to the priorly mentioned universities instead. Later, Holzer taught parapsychology at the New York Institute of Technology. For those of you that do not know, parapsychology is, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a field of study concerned with the investigation of evidence for paranormal psychological phenomena such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. Throughout the course of his life, Holzer published more than 120 books on topics of the occult, ghosts, paranormal phenomena, and other related subjects. He also wrote musicals, plays, documentaries, and was also involved in films. And in recent years, his case files have been revisited in the Holzer Files, a TV series beginning in 2019 under the supervision of his daughter Alexandra Holzer. Hans Holzer is often framed as one of the most prominent popularizers of the ghost investigation scene in the 20th century. However, in light of the ever-essential critical scrutiny, here are a few key areas where his claims are well-known, along with how they stand under evaluation. He was perhaps most widely well-known for investigating the Amityville horror house following the infamous Defoe murders. During that time, he worked with the medium Ethel Myers to attempt spirit contact and claimed that photographs he took of bullet holes in the house showed mysterious halos or aura-like effects around them. Both Holzer and Myers claim to have channeled a Native American chief named Rolling Thunder of the Shinnecock tribe who allegedly said the land was a burial ground and that a spirit had possessed Ronald Defoe Jr. However, historical and local sources tend to contest aspects of this, clarifying that the Shinnecock did not historically inhabit that land and that the Montauk people were the more likely tribe in the region. Critics also argued that Holzer relied on anecdotal testimony, mediumistic claims, and photographic anomalies that had not been subjugated to rigorous peer review. On that note, Holzer frequently referred to himself as a scientific investigator of the paranormal, but skeptical and critical appraisals of his methodology raised several issues. For instance, much of Holzer's evidence was testimonial or eyewitness report-based, spirit communications via mediums, and photographic or audio anomalies, and unfortunately these types of evidences are notoriously difficult to validate under controlled conditions. Because many of Holzer's claims depend on information received through mediums, critics note that mediums mediums are plausibly susceptible to suggestion, cold reading, confabulation, or any other number of fraudulent or even misguided representations and practices. Along with this, as noted earlier, the claimed London College of Applied Science that awarded his PhD could not be validated from independent academic records, and that raised some doubts about the institution's legitimacy in general. While general critics pointed out that many of Holzer's investigations lacked rigorous documentation, that he selectively reported data, and that he sometimes failed to include natural explanations to events, other parapsychologists and psychical researchers also expressed reservations about Holzer's reliance on anomalous media and lack of minimum standards of evidence. In short, while Holzer strongly claimed and even at times did present scientific rigor, much of his work could not satisfy the standard criteria for reproducibility, falsifiability, or peer validation in mainstream science. While the criticisms of Holzer's methodology are viewed as largely justified, many find sympathy with his plight, as the documentation and study of paranormal topics comes with some innate complications due to the source material itself. Therefore, with all of this in mind, today we'll be examining Holzer's communication, both nonverbal and verbal, in order to assess whether or not he truly believed what he was saying, or if it was all just a show made up for money. Not only will I be focusing on his facial movements and micro-expressions to glean some information, I will also analyze his body's kinesics and his audio and verbal patterns in order to add some clarity to the topic that tends to be shrouded in a fair bit of mystery. With all of this being said, let's dive into this interview from 1985 on the Detroit-based talk show Kelly and Company.
This time of year seems to bring out the ghosts and goblins. Coming up next, we'll hear of some real-life hauntings that don't go away after Halloween.
Thank you. Well, Halloween.
Just wanted to pause and make note. I love the retro feeling to this specific talk show. It sounds from that era. It looks from that era. The music is from that era. You can hear the audio. I was going to clean up the audio a bit just to make it a little bit more clean, crisp, and everything like that. But I liked the charm of the episodes from that era. Just wanted to make note of that. Nothing important non-verbally, just enjoying the feeling of sitting and watching a TV show, talk show from 1985.
Well, Halloween is the time of the year when children and adults alike dress up in strange costumes and pretend they're someone or something that they're not. Ghosts and goblins are on the children's minds. Certainly, many myths have sprung up around this particular day, and certain mystic feelings are there. Here to talk about Halloween and what it really means, where it came from, and indeed, ghosts in general, is a gentleman who has done a great deal of research in this field. He is a parapsychologist. Welcome, Dr. Hans Holzer to Kelly and Company. Hans, Halloween means what? All Hallows Eve?
Correct. It's really the pagan equivalent of All Souls Day, which follows November 1. There's really no difference except that the pagans were there ahead of Christianity, and they celebrated the changing of the seasons from the summer to the winter half of the year. And in the old pagan Anglo-Saxon Celtic religion called the Old Religion, which we know as witchcraft, white witchcraft that is, simply the celebration consisted in, at midnight, opening the gates to the other side of the world so that the spirits of the dead could converse with the living. And that is how ghosts got into the act, really, basically. The idea that the spirits can, in fact, talk to the living at that particular time. But Halloween, which we celebrate with dressing up and with candy and with,
trick-or-treating,
all this, that is a development in relatively modern times, aided and abetted by, I would think, the toy and candy manufacturers.
I think so.
And which bears very little resemblance to what it's all about.
What is it all about, then?
It's a serious holiday in the pagan calendar, marking the beginning of winter and also the changing of the seasons, and a kind of thinking about death and transfiguration and all those things. It's
Because
a
of the
serious
death of the leaves, I
Yeah,
suspect.
it's a seasonal holiday, and nothing more than that.
Nothing more
and,
than
you have all kinds of weird notions, of course, unless you happen to know. And I've spent a lot of time doing a documentary, which still, after 10 years, isn't finished, on the witchcraft movement, on the neo-pagan movements, good, bad, and indifferent. And
All right, let's talk about witchcraft for a minute, bro.
So that entire answer that he gave there's not anything that's, oh, this is faked, or he's trying to peddle something in this area. So this kind of serves as a pretty decent baseline establishing question. How he answers in this question lets us know how he's going to answer in a way that doesn't have any psychological weight behind it. Because again, there's not really anything to lie about here. This is just historical stuff. So during that time, we can look at his nonverbal communication and understand a little bit about how he behaves in this specific scenario. So you see his eyebrows remain furrowed throughout the entirety of this. That is his resting state for his eyebrows. That being said, if they stray from there, then that would be a spike from that baseline, and we'd have to pay attention what caused his face to move differently there than it does regularly. Along with that, you can hear his verbal patterns. He has areas where if he's trying to think about something, he does not have any issues with saying ums or uhs or having some pauses or breaks in there as he's pondering something, and that's just pondering, trying to come up with the words for things. So if that strays, again, if he goes cleanly through an answer and doesn't have any consideration when it should be a question that would take some consideration, well, that could be a straying from his baseline. Along with that, if it does increase, because he has an average amount of that breaking in there, if it increases around a certain topic, again, that's another spike in his baseline. So this answer, while rather inconsequential to determining whether or not he's being a fraud, is very useful in determining whether or not we can read his nonverbal communication throughout the rest of it more accurately. Just wanted to leave that entire thing in there so we could kind of understand how his behavior is before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of what they're going to talk about here, which we have a little bit more before we get around to that.
For a minute, bro. We know the popular conception, we all do, the witch riding the broom and the cone cap and all that stuff.
the black cat, don't forget
Yes,
that.
black.
Yes.
And you mentioned there's two kinds of witchcraft?
There's only one kind, because there's no such thing as black witchcraft. That's another. Black witchcraft and warlocks are strictly Hollywood. They are. I know. I miss them too, personally.
Yeah.
But basically, witchcraft is wickedcraft, which is the old.
So something that starts off, which it starts off screen, we're not seeing his face when it spikes up, is the facial manipulator around his mouth. He starts doing something there, which these manipulators around your mouth have a number of connotations around them, depending on when they spike up and how they spike up. For his, it is still also centered around this propping up of one's face in regards to what's being spoken about. Now, this can be just relaxation, but oftentimes what you'll see, especially in areas like this, is if somebody has something that they want to share, as somebody else is sharing something, you could see them start to do these sorts of manipulators. So if, say for instance, you're in front of a group of people and you're talking about something and you start to see a number of people starting to lean forward and start doing some manipulators around their mouth in that sort of way, well, pay attention to that. That means that they have something that they want to share. So as soon as there is that opportunity to be like, all right, people, class, whoever I'm talking to, do any of you have questions? That will open up that door for them to be able to share as well. And this is not just in like a classroom setting. This can be in a interpersonal setting. If you're just talking to your friend and you're saying something and you see that come out, they have something they want to share. So that could be the case that's happening there. Another possibility, which doesn't fit so much with this, is that he's doing a mouth blocking gesture, which that's centered around the psychology of you're more prone to touch your mouth when you're saying something that you feel like you might not or should not say. So it could be a lie. It could be sharing a secret that shouldn't be shared. It could be even something that you're not certain about. And so you're like, ooh, I don't know if this is actually accurate, but I'm saying it anyways. You could see those start to come out there. And that could be in regards to what he's talking. Maybe he doesn't have that certainty in what he's talking about with that. Then that's why that mouth touching blocking gesture is coming in there. That does not fit as well contextually as the other side of things. If he is passionate about this, which he's been doing this for apparently a few years at this point, And if he's passionate about this and the interviewer is talking about the subject that he's passionate about, it would make sense to see that come out there. Wanted to make note of that very overt mouth-touching cluster that just happened there and give you a little bit of the nonverbal context as to what that can mean. As to the actual subjects of what he's speaking about in this, I am not a historian. I don't know a lot of the depth of paganism or where Wiccacraft comes from and things like that, so I would have to defer more to what he understands of it and then pay attention to his body language to see if what he's saying raises any red flags in his psychology and therefore in my perception of it, if that all makes sense. Regardless.
Which is the old religion of England and Scandinavia. Wicca. There is a tiny and very vociferous movement, if that's what you call it, called Satanism, which has nothing to do with witchcraft. It's the perversion of witchcraft. To witchcraft, Satanism is what atheism is to Christianity. It's the perversion. It's the taking the trimmings and using them for their own purpose. And satanic groups exist. There are the real ones you and I will never meet because they're killers, they're murderers, and they're insane, like the Mansons. And then there's the would-be satanic group, mainly very young people who get the thrill of dressing up in black robes and inverted pentagrams.
It's baloney that we've heard, playing records backwards.
It's all B-U-double-L.
Balderdash.
Yes, that's the word you're looking for. You pronounce it a little differently from me, but I'm from New York, so yes, we cleaned that up.
All right, so during that time, he's carrying his same patterns that he's had non-verbally throughout that as he's talking. Verbally, you hear the same uhs and breaks in there that you've heard in the prior segment where he was just talking about the history of things. And so with that, I'm not seeing any strings from his baseline in this answer. That also being said, hearing how he is rather rigidly compartmentalizing these various segments of beliefs and thinkings, that might fit more so with that day and age and the way that they perceived things. That doesn't fit so much from my understanding now. There's a lot more blended nature to these beliefs than what he's presenting here. And maybe I don't know. Maybe he's presenting like a purist point of view of like, oh, it's this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And as we've kind of advanced as a race and whatnot, we've found much more of life exists in spectrums and grays than blacks and whites. And so having these hard lines is rather complicated. But throughout that, he doesn't have any issues with it until it gets around to the end where he's saying that everything is bull. And then the commentator does their little back and forth. And then you see a number of self-soothing gestures in interesting places come out from Holzer during this. Is you see some face touching, you see him manipulate his tie, and that's in there in that suprasternal notch. Now, both of those are usually indicative of a level of anxiety, anxiousness, agitation, as I say here on the channel. I don't know if that's in relation to anything that was actually being spoken of the actual content of it, or just because it was a little interaction, a social interaction here on TV, and that makes many people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So you'll see any form of manipulators kind of come out, especially ones that are in the vein of preening gestures as well, which preening gestures are done because you are hyper aware of how you're being perceived. So that adjusting of his tie over his suprasternal notch area, that would be a self-soothing gesture as well as a preening gesture, letting us know that there was some agitation. He's aware of how it's being perceived, but it makes sense with the little social blip that they had back and forth talking about whether or not something is bull or balderdash or, whatever like that. Just things that we're making note of. Again, nothing that's really harping on the existence of ghosts or anything like that quite yet. We're still just kind of establishing and understanding what behaviors are in this specific interview.
There is nothing to that except in the mind of the one who practices it.
Do you mean that witches cannot cast evil spells?
They can't even turn you and I into frogs. Now, personally, I don't want to be a frog.
No,
what witchcraft, above all, is a form of self-fulfillment. Basically, what I'm saying is that
I can appreciate where he's coming from that, and just from a purely scientific point of view, the existence of spells, curses, things like that, they haven't been able to be tested in a scientific setting. So it's difficult to be like, oh, I know for certain scientifically. There can be a myriad of life experiences or beliefs that can push you to feel a certain way, but until it's rigorously proven in a scientific controlled environment, it's difficult to really say for certain that that exists. So I understand where he's coming from of saying like, witches can't do ... Again, that is black and whiting it a little bit, and it does seem to be discrediting some experiences from general populations kind of thing. But I do understand where he's coming from and why he has that sort of pushback against it. Non-verbally speaking, there wasn't anything to fly in the face of that. It doesn't feel like he was trying to pull wool over anybody's eyes in that point. I think that he also just genuinely believes that that's the representation of witchcraft in our reality, if that makes sense.
What I'm saying is that the old religion of England and Scandinavia believes God is a lady, believes in reincarnation, believes also in the environment, into ecology, all the things that are essentially very positive. They do not know a thing about the devil. That is the invention of the medieval church.
Well, then all of this really sprang from a harvest, successful or not, preparation for the winter, celebration.
That is a fascinating thing that he's pointed out there as well, is that a lot of the mechanisms behind the witchcraft that he's speaking of here, the old religion that he's speaking of there, are positive things. They're self-encouragement and self-fulfillment and exploration, and then also being environmentally conscious, things like that, like all positive things that I think most people should be investing time and energy into. But that's not how it was painted out by, especially as the Roman Catholic religion became more prominent in human history. That's not how that was painted out. And it's even mentioned in scriptural texts of like the pagans are the antithesis of Christians. And in reality, a lot of the methodology behind each teaching, there are multiple mechanisms that line up rather well, and it's just this mindset, it's almost like a tribal mindset that has been developed over time of like, this is way better and this is way worse just because I'm in this group and you're in that group and things like that. And so it's interesting to hear a person who I don't believe that Holzer's a Christian. I don't think he's a faith-based person in general. And so it's interesting to hear him speak of these topics that have heavily to do with faith without him being steeped in it. It's just a fascinating point of view that he's taking there, because he's not taking an antagonistic point of view either. He's just stating more of the historical facts that are able to be tracked down that don't come from the intrinsic belief systems themselves.
Celebration of the fact that it was a good harvest and a good year, and the death of a season and the beginning of another.
Yeah, I mean, they're all very nice people in the old days. I mean, they had little sex in the fields, which may be inconvenient, but it's apparently worked for the fields.
Certainly dirty.
Yeah, well, but
dusty, anyhow.
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of chances you take.
A lot of straw sticking out of the ears, I guess.
Yes, well, not only out of the ears, but all kinds of possibilities. Yes. But they did it, they were having that thing, and, they were sort of rolling with it.
Well, and I guess there are no such things as ghosts and all that either?
Oh, yes, there are ghosts. Heavens, yes. I mean, that's the wrong word, perhaps, but there are ghosts. Well,
apparitions?
Apparitions. Well, I have spent, I don't know how many years in parapsychology, and of course they are ghosts. And in fact, there's photographic evidence of apparitions. They are people. They are not devils.
So during this entire time now, obviously the history stuff still, whatever. But now we're on to the existence of ghosts, and he's maintaining this specific gesture where he's keeping his finger just below his mouth here. There's probably some movements in there a little bit. He'll gesture at times, but then it'll return back to here. And so for me, watching that, since I've seen that in the past in a specific area, and it made more sense for it to be one of those things where he's like, I have things to share, so I'm doing this specific manipulator here. It might be in that case. However, he's also talking at this point. It's not like this started and then he started talking. Maybe it did, but from what I saw there, it seems as though this started happening as he was talking. So to me, that raises some questions. Is this now sitting in that mouth touching gesture in regards to it being a blocking gesture? Maybe he's not supposed to be saying this or feels like he shouldn't be saying this. Perhaps, but if we do our due diligence with this, you also have to keep in mind his verbal patterns, vocal patterns, and the rest of everything else non-verbally as well. You can't just rely on that one tell. And if you keep that in mind, I don't believe that he's at this point trying to pull wool over anybody's eyes. I think that he believes what he's saying here, which, again, non-verbally speaking, the best that a non-verbal analyst can do is prove if the person that is talking believes what they're talking about. If the person that is talking believes what they're talking about and it's a lie, that won't show up non-verbally because the person believes it. If the person doesn't believe it, then it can start showing up because it's a lie. But if they believe it, even if it might not be true, the non-verbals will only show that they're being authentic. So during this time, it feels like he's being authentic. Along with that, the speed at which he responded to the question of, are ghosts even real? Oh, yes, of course they're real. And then finally, along with that, a pretty big non-verbal thing that he did with that is the scrunching up of his face. You could see, despite his activity in his eyebrows and glabella being fairly constant, it intensifies even further. He also adds some disgust into the corners of his nose, and it's almost an outrage response is what that would be. That cluster is signifying outrage. So he answers quickly. He has that little cluster of agitation. It has disgust in there. It has some perhaps contempt or scorn as his eyebrows are drawn even further together and lowered even further. And so he has those emotional responses to the question of if ghosts are even real. At this point, I believe that he believes that ghosts are indeed real, and he's been in the field for a minute, so it's something to at least take into consideration. Let's continue.
Devils, and they are not monsters. I mean, Ghostbusters aside, there are parts of people when somebody passes on in shock and isn't aware of this transition called physical death.
Yeah, well,
then something happens.
That's
now,
one of the photographs.
for instance,
is that a ghost?
That's, as a matter of fact, 3 ghosts is taken under test condition by a doctor, a medical doctor, Dr. von Salze, on a golf course in California, and this happens to be 3 monks
Playing through,
playing through, and they happen to be enveloped by flames because in 1532, and that's a long story I won't go into, they were burned for being heretics by fellow monks. Those were charming times.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, just speaking about what he's speaking on, that's a fascinating point of view. In case you missed it or the pausing was weird or cut up was weird, he's saying that there are ghosts, there are spirits, but they're not devils and they're not monsters, despite what the media has shown and pushed. It's more likely remnants of a person's psychology left behind after their physical body has passed. And now this raises so many difficult and at this point still impossible to answer questions of what happens after we die. What do we perceive? Where do the various portions of our being go? Physically speaking, it makes a lot of sense. Your body just does what every single organic body does, and it decomposes and goes back into the ecosystem in various ways. But if we're speaking of the mind, it becomes way, way, way more difficult. Not only one, because we as a human race still don't understand how the mind exists, what exactly goes into especially the human mind. And as we're advancing in science and exploring more and finding better techniques to be able to do more experiments with other minds, it's revealing that there are more complexities than what we had anticipated, which of course makes sense. But if we're even going off of what we already know, there's a lot of electrical pulses that go around in your brain. That's basically all of your thoughts, emotions, feelings are these electrical signals that go around. Now, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So that means that when you die, the energy that was in there, it has to go somewhere. So if that energy was in your mind before, where did it go afterwards? And that's one of the big questions. So for him, the way that he approaches this, which I understand where he's approaching this from, and to me it makes the most sense for this realm of thinking, is that just because the physical form died does not mean that the psychology, the mind itself also died and went away or anything like that. It has to do something. And so he talks about other dimensions, but it's also the possibility of leaving remnants of it behind, and that's what we see as ghosts. It's not the full person oftentimes, it's just a fragment of them, and the processing, which I don't even understand how this could possibly work without a physical form or a mechanism to be able to hold it together. The consciousness still exists there, and they don't know that they're still on this specific three-dimensional plane that we exist in, because they're just energy, which means that they might have access to different dimensions, and there are different dimensions. We're not just in our three dimensions. There are more dimensions. String theory proves this. There are many, many theories that prove that there are different dimensions. So that's his mindset behind this, which I find fascinating. And again, non-verbally speaking, he hasn't done anything during this time to push me towards him maybe showboating this or trying to claim something or make this a little bit more than it should be, or really harping or hamming something up to make more money or make more of a spectacle. That's not what he's been doing, even verbally. That's not how he's approaching it. And it's such a contrast from the Warrens last week that I did, where all of theirs was centered around showmanship and showboating and storytelling, and they wanted to be the best of whatever and given by God and all of that stuff. That's not how he's approaching it, and I do appreciate that, even if I still approach it with a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yeah. Let's see that again, please.
Yeah.
Have you lost
I'm going
it?
to walk the other way.
There they are.
Probably.
There they are.
Yeah, no, here they
now,
are.
these guys were burnt. Was this the location where there's now a golf course? Where they?
Yes.
I see.
And the interesting part about it is the Historical Society insisted there had never been any monks there. And I was originally a trained historian, and I don't take anybody's word for anything anymore. So I went to the museum in New York, the Hispanic Society, and there I found an original broadside, which is a document printed at the time, and there was a story about a group of the Franciscan monks having gone off into the wilderness of Northern California and written to the Spanish crown complaining about mistreatment of the Indians. And the Spanish crown, instead of doing something about it, sent them the Dominicans, which were the Inquisition, had them burned. And this is a fact. And they're apparently still walking. It's a long walk.
And you can take. What is this?
Well, this is the white thing on the right. It's taken in a house in Ireland. You can see it, just barely on this one, but it's a white shadow of a woman servant who wasn't told she was dead, and she kept on serving the master day in, day out, walking through the walls.
She wasn't told she was dead?
No, she hadn't been informed.
You think she could figure it out herself?
Well, yeah, I figured because she wasn't getting any wages anymore.
Right, no payday.
But she didn't look for them either, come to think of it.
Can these creatures reach out and do you harm?
First of all, they're not creatures, they're people.
Throughout that, again, non-verbally speaking, he has maintained consistency. He hasn't shifted any. There's nothing that's been shut down. There's nothing that's spiked up dramatically or anything like that to be able to stray from the baseline that we've kind of been able to establish within this interview. We're still seeing consistent returning to this specific position, which maybe that is then part of his baseline. If we've now seen that through multiple points about multiple different topics and multiple levels of intensity of questions, we've seen him return to this. Maybe this is just where he comfortably sits. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we're going through this, that this mouth-touching gesture could be part of his baseline. It could be just how he's most comfortable. It could also be him still self-soothing himself because he's in front of a bunch of people. This is a television show, things like that. There might be some residual anxiety that he might be experiencing. But calling it back around to the photos that he provided there, to me, especially as somebody heavily invested in videography and photography, seeing that specific display, it does not, to me, convince me of anything. Because those photos, while they do have human-esque features about aspects of them, they also have very overt features of photographic anomalies, and this can be done through any form of method. It can be a light leak, say the lens wasn't fully connected, or light hit the lens from a specific area causing a certain flare. With the second one where it's talking about the woman who is still serving and going through the house and hadn't been told that she had passed, even that, it's not like I can tangibly really see that. That's so obviously and clearly a ghost. It still can be easily written off as being, again, a photographic anomaly. And I still maintain the mindset of, if you're going to make supernatural claims, you should have supernatural evidence for it. Otherwise, you can claim whatever you want and kind of just throw whatever measly evidence towards it that you want to and call that good. And that just doesn't cut it. It's just something that I don't think should be taken very lightly, and nor should the evidence towards it be very weak. I think it should be strong. If you're gonna base a lot of belief into something like that, there should be something very, very compelling pulling you towards that evidentiarily. Otherwise, it's just a faith, and that's fine. Everybody can believe whatever they want to, but as soon as that belief starts to infringe on anybody else's or say to any other group that doesn't hold that belief, as soon as that starts to infringe and say you need to do this or this or this or else, any form of or else, that's not really a belief. That's just a system of manipulation and control. So I appreciate his more level-headed approach to the supernatural that he's taken so far here, or even as he says, I don't think he believes in supernatural. I think he just believes in the paranormal. But even with that, it still doesn't seem adequate in my eyes. Those two photos don't cut it. There needs to be more, and there needs to be more in a controlled environment that ensures that people who are notoriously nefarious. People are wily little turds all the time. And so scientific rigor helps circumvent the possibility of somebody just lying or hoaxing something for attention or money. I'm left feeling somewhat conflicted in many parts of this.
The
Not
people,
creatures,
yeah,
they're
but
just apparitions, these
they're not aware of you and I, barely aware, because they are so caught up in these thought forms. They are part of the personality that stays behind when the physical part is dissolved, and it is not. These people are unable to cope with what they are. I mean, they're in trouble.
But they don't necessarily come out and do their thing more than others on other days of the year, on Halloween.
No, that's a fantasy, of course.
Fantasy.
But they're there all the time, day in and night. They don't walk at midnight. They walk all hours of the day.
Not in the full moon or anything
no,
like
no,
that.
No, none of that. It's very romantic, and I love it. But the truth of the matter is, apparitions are very real. They are not supernatural. They're part of human experience.
I saw some hands. Now, you guys, it's all up to you. But just before we began this, a goodly number of you said you believed in ghosts. Do any of you have an experience to...
So before we get into this question and answer portion that we're about to hear, again, I appreciate the lack of theatrics that he takes to a paranormal existence or things that would be considered extra natural. He wouldn't call it supernatural. It's just something that exists that we don't understand yet. So it's para or extra, something along those lines. That also still being said, the evidence that he has isn't overwhelming. It's not something that's concretely replicatable in like a laboratory or anything like that. So it's still something that you have to take with more of a grain of salt than if it was just a mathematical equation, if that makes sense.
To which you can attribute this firm belief, and if so, may I see your hands? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, do you mind talking about it? Think about it. We'll take a break. We'll be back with Dr. Holzer in 2 minutes and see if they want to talk about their ghostly experience. Thank you. All right, we're back with Dr. Holzer, and this is one of the folks that says you've had a ghostly experience?
Similar, I think. When I was 14, my dad's mother died, and we were living in Missouri at the time, and they flew to Dundee, Michigan to her funeral, and they mailed a box of things that belonged to my grandmother home before they flew back. And when they got home that night, my mother had these little cards. I guess they're death cards, little death certificates or whatever they are. And I asked her if I could have one, and she said to talk to her in the morning, and she would give me one then. She had to mail a bunch of them out. Well, I looked with her all that morning, and we could not find them, and I saw where she put them. Well, that day, we forgot about it, and that same day, the UPS man came with that box that they had mailed home, and those cards were on the very top of that box when we opened it up.
Yeah, they like to do that, little things like that. It's when somebody passes on, they would like you to know that things aren't exactly the way they were supposed to be.
I didn't know what the message was, and if it would have just happened to my mother, I would have thought she was crazy. But it's just...
You saw it. You experienced.
I was there with her, and I experienced it too, and we never did understand what the message was or what it meant.
Simple. The message is simple, to let you know that life goes on.
That's it. Scary business. Gentleman here's had an experience. Yeah.
As he's saying simple, it's to let you know that life goes on. He does a little shrug there off to the side. Now, that lopsided shrug is usually insecurity or insincerity, something along those lines. And so seeing that come out there, it makes me question just a hair. And also, I don't really know that he could know exactly what the message was. So seeing that also would then track. Like, if he's not feeling super certain on that, then maybe that would slip out there. He also does an eyebrow cock as well, which that coincides with that partial shrug in there. And so I am left curious, was that partial shrug in relation to the eyebrow cock being like the, I don't know, like that's what he was saying kind of thing, like that sort of linguistic energy as he's trying to respond to this person? I'm not certain on that. It is just something that I wanted to make note of, that there is the possibility that at that point when he was responding to that question, he was not so certain on that. Just fascinating to make note of. There's going to be more.
Experience. Yes, sir. Would you stand?
Yes. A couple of years ago in Connecticut, in a house, and they said, this special chair is for the ghost. Don't sit in it. And I said, okay. And the house was built in 17-something. And they showed me through the house, and he had many different stores around the area of Connecticut. And they said, don't sit in that chair and don't close that door. So, being a Michigander, I'm not from Missouri, but I have to be proven to myself. I closed the door.
Sat in the chair.
No, I didn't
Okay.
sit in the chair,
Oh.
no. I didn't go that far.
Okay.
They showed me the rest of the house. It was about a 6-story house, and we went up and down. We come back to that door, and it was open. And the chair was actually swaying.
Well, if you would have sat into it, it would have been kind of a hot seat, wouldn't it? Yes.
I think so.
But these things do happen. There's a chair in Ashlawn, which is near Washington, that keeps swinging back and forth all the time. It used to be President Monroe's personal chair.
Okay, that specific instance, again, the interesting experience for sure. All of these that the people have are going to be interesting experiences, but also very easily excusable by anything else. A person could have gone up and opened the door, especially if the house had people in it that said, don't shut this door, like don't shut it, leave it open, that sort of thing. Then they may have gone up there and done that regardless because they don't feel like it should have been. And then the swaying of the chair itself, we could just take the gentleman's word that that was exactly what happened. And maybe it was swaying in a way that we cannot comprehend or at least physically explain. There is also the possibility that it was bumped by the same person that opened the door before. Very difficult to say. And the reason that I immediately sway towards that is because it has been repeatedly shown in like the more modern ghost hunting scenarios that staffing at these various haunted places will do things to try to mess with the people that are doing in any form of paranormal investigation, things like that. Not only one, because it's fun, but also two, because then it encourages more sales and more interaction in that place and blah, blah, blah. So I'm immediately suspicious of that being any form of real evidence for the paranormal, just because nobody was there. Nobody could say that it did in fact open on its own and it did in fact start moving on its own. It was just an aftermath realization of, oh, they went back up there and now it's doing those things. So that one's a little bit more problematic to me. And then along with that, his response to that was, there's this other chair that does that, which isn't really an answer, but also I suppose he couldn't really answer too much about that because he wasn't there either. And since nobody was actually there on that one, to me, that one just is neither here nor there. It can just be a story. Maybe it happened. It also maybe didn't happen.
Hans, have you ever, in all of the years that you have, and we're making gags here, but the truth is that this is a very serious research project and ongoing for you. Mm-hmm. Have you ever encountered a situation that you find totally inexplicable, that you cannot explain?
Well, I'm congenitally incapable of accepting anything as not explicable, because I think there's always an answer if you look for it. No, I've never been faced with a situation that I could not sooner or later find a reason for. But the reason includes, of course, a firm conviction that there is an ongoing dimension to which we all go.
Have you ever been in fear?
In fear?
Right.
Only in fear of human ignorance and human stupidity, which occasionally crops up even among the best. But basically, no, because I enter this openly. I come as a friend to those on the other side of life. And a couple of times I have been in a kind of a tight spot when they get mad at me. But then you keep calm and you just remember that you must be in charge or else you lose everything.
Have you ever felt a malevolence, an evil?
Oh, yes, I have. In the Amityville house, it wasn't particularly pleasant. But I don't allow these things to prevail. Sure, the poor Indian chief in the Amityville house wasn't exactly a happy person.
Yeah.
Having his skull cut off from his skeleton, you know, it's not very pleasant, especially when you're still in it.
I'll drink to that.
All right. Interesting perspective there again, especially in regards to the fear side of things. A lot of what I've seen in the paranormal investigations is that, you can't show fear, you can't let them in, this openness, you can't accept energy in and things like that. And there's this mindset of that, which I have a lot of questions around if that were the case, which it seems to be a widely accepted mindset. And if that's the case, what could be going into that psychologically and scientifically? If this is really happening to people, what about this openness, or what about fear? What about being in control? What about these psychological mindsets is preventative of these sorts of things? It's interesting. During that time, non-verbally speaking, you see, again, this manipulator stay here. It's moved from being kind of more firmly planted below his mouth to the entire time that he's talking through this, he's kind of covering his mouth. Now, that one to me is more fascinating. It is different. It is a different location than just being planted underneath his mouth here as he's thinking or pondering something, having words to say, something along those lines, to where now he's doing this very regularly. And so I'm wondering if maybe he's speaking with not as much assuredness in this area. I don't know that he's willingly lying. His vocal patterns and audio patterns haven't shifted. It's not like he's increased dramatically in pitch or he's dropped dramatically in pitch. It's not like the spacing of his words has changed dramatically. There hasn't really been any spikes around that. All that's really spiked up is this new evolvement of this manipulator around his mouth. And so I do have curiosity in regards to that, but I also do appreciate, again, that mindset of like all of this is still, it's just people, and it's the leftovers of people, it's the leftovers of their minds in various areas, and that tracks with what I've heard anybody else say. And so I am still more in support of his point of view of its remnants of a person's psychology. But I am fascinated by that manipulator coming in there, and it does poke some holes in my certainty with what he's saying there. Still, we've got some more to go through.
After this show, I may drink to anything. Yes, ma'am.
There's a rocking chair that rocks in my attic only when I'm home by myself, and I've gone up there to see. Don't rock when I get there, but as I leave and get downstairs, it starts to rock again.
You have a relative, probably. He doesn't want to be left alone.
Oh, okay. I'll see about that.
Has that rocking chair been in the family for a while?
I don't know. I can't. I just hear it.
You just hear it.
Yeah, and I go up to see. And when I get there, I can't hear anything, and I only hear it when I'm home by myself.
Have you ever seen the chair rocking?
Yeah.
Try to find out whether one of your passed-on relatives is just kind of lonely, because I'm serious about this. People who pass on and don't want to continue passing on hang around, and they like attention.
Okay.
Okay,
That's an interesting mindset for it as well, of just because a person dies, it doesn't make them less human in their cognition. So just because they're passed into this next dimension, or however energy disperses, a human's mind energy disperses, however that happens, just because they've made that transition from physical to more energy-based, that doesn't mean that they don't want attention and recognition from the people around them. And so maybe some of these things that are done to get attention from the people around them. Maybe. I mean, that's fascinating, but then that also does kind of contradict what he said earlier, where they have very little cognitive notice of our day-to-day life because they're stuck in some form of loop or something along those lines. It just adds more difficulty to it. Yeah. Anyway, we don't have much left.
Okay, I remember I was small, and I was just about 10 years old, and my brother had been acting up, so I said, well, I'm going to tell Mother to get you. My parents was dead, both of them. And I went to her picture. She had a large picture with about 8 by 10. And I said, okay, Mother, Ted's been acting up, so you should give him a whooping. And so that night, something whipped him. Because when he woke up, I mean, he had whelps all over him. And he was screaming and hollering, but nobody was there. So what did you account that to?
I can match this kind of story all 1,000 times over. Just try to understand that when you pass on into the next stage of existence, you have all your foibles, your personality, your likes and dislikes, your weaknesses and your strength intact. You don't turn into something ethereal just because you're over there.
Yes, ma'am. Would you stand, please?
My father died in the afternoon. My mother and I came home and found him. That night I slept on the sofa. Middle of the night, I sat up, and my dad was standing there talking to me, telling me everything was going to be all right, don't worry. 2 seconds later, my mother flew out of the bedroom and told her, Dad said everything's going to be all right, you're going to take care of me.
Yes, why not? Of course. This is a very common thing, actually.
I couldn't see through him. I saw him. He was there.
Oh, that's another thing about ghosts being ethereal and sort of you can see through them and they float. All this is not true.
Well, why can't you take their picture then instead of seeing these things like?
But I have, and others have.
Well, those are two things you just showed us.
Well,
I mean, that could be overexposed film.
No, it cannot. Show it again if you believe.
He's got them put away. You got any yellows left up there, Mason? I mean, it could be...
How can you say that?
It could be light struck. It could be fogged.
I have 50 photographs of apparitions taken under test conditions.
There's the three
You don't
guys.
see the
you
figures?
could, the film could have gone partially unrolled, and the three monks turned out to be a thumb.
It didn't. That's the whole point. This was taken under test condition by a medical doctor. Now, this doesn't look like overexposure. It's the figures. You can see that. The heads and arms and all that. And I can match this with dozens of others. Sure, of course. Some years ago...
Are you an imaginative or...
I'd see that's again, that's where I start having some issues, because even the host of the show is like, I mean, it could have been any form of photographic anomaly, and it appears as a photographic anomaly. And his response to that is like, well, it could have been, but it wasn't, which then we're left taking his word at that, because for everybody else looking at it, it looks like it likely could have been just a photographic anomaly. But he's saying that he has multiple pictures of it and repeats, and it was very difficult. I was not able to track that down. Again, I have always had immense difficulty anytime the people claim that they have these forms of visual evidence like that. I have a lot of difficulty actually tracking it down. And then if I do track it down, to find stuff that seems actually genuinely authentic and not hoaxed in some way is next to impossible. You could find any level of proof videos where a drawer moves or a chair moves or something like that, but all of that again is very easily hoaxed. A child could figure out how to hoax it. So if that's all the evidence that you have, unfortunately that's not sufficient. If you're going to make supernatural claims or extranatural claims or anything like that, you have to have evidence that has the same weight. The evidence that's being delivered at that time is inadequate at best, and so I still am left feeling like, yeah, you seem like you have a fairly level head about you, but what you're presenting as evidence still just doesn't cut it. And eventually, if this belief system is genuine, if it's actually something that does exist, if our minds do somehow stick around, eventually technology and science will catch up to that and be able to explain it. We're not able to right now, but if that's true, we will. And so I guess time will tell on that front, but we've got a minute left and then we'll wrap up.
Imaginative or an unimaginative person? How would you categorize yourself?
Very unimaginative. I'm very cautious. I'm not from Missouri, but I feel that way. No.
It's got to be proven.
Well, it's got to be reasonably proven. But remember, the will to disbelieve is 10 times stronger than the will to believe, because it upsets us to think that there's another side to life when we die. A lot of people don't want to hear about that.
Doggone it, our time is gone. I'm so fascinated by this, and I wanted to get into reincarnation. Hans is, you're in town, aren't you appearing somewhere in the area?
I did last night. I spoke.
He had, one of the things that interests him is reincarnation, because he said you feel all these things are allied. And his current book is Life Beyond Life, the evidence for reincarnation. Putting it another way, previous lives and lives in the future. Fascinating, Hans. Always good to have you here. I hope that you'll be in our area again real soon. Let's pick it up where we left off.
And I hope your Halloween is a pleasant one and all your witches are friendly.
Dr. Hans Holzer. Right back.
All right, well, there was that entire little nostalgic TV episode from Hans Holzer there. If I had to compare Warren's to him, I feel more compelled to believe his perspective than I do the Warren's perspective. The Warrens were just so littered with manipulations and misinformations and dramatizations and everything else that it's not something that I would be like, I'm going to take their word for it. Also, how driven by money they were was another very blaring red flag to me from his side of things. While I still do not feel like this video is adequate, it doesn't show that there's supernatural, extranatural, or anything, or paranormal, or anything like that. It does seem as though he's put more of a scientific thought to it than what the Warrens did. And I can definitely appreciate that. I have not read any of his books or anything along those lines. If you have, and let me know in the comments of the video kind of what you think of it, how they actually ended up playing out. I appreciated how he represented his side of things, but at the end of this, I still don't, like I said, I don't find this to be adequate representation or enough evidence to say that there are things like the paranormal things that were spoken about here. But let me know your thoughts in the comments of this video. I know a few of you had some comments in the last one talking about some experiences that you had that you don't know how to explain otherwise, and I'm always interested in those. I am always fascinated hearing about that, because to me, I don't want that to not be true. Like, it sounds incredible, and it also makes sense to me, like, especially considering that energy, matter cannot be created or destroyed. It merely changes location and form and things like that. So like, that pushes me to believe that just because a person's physical body dies, their brain, their mind, which is electrical impulses as far as we can understand it, which we don't understand it, but as far as we do understand it, it's electricity, that wouldn't just disappear either. And so where does that go? What does it hold on to? How do memories actually work in regards to that? Are they stored in the hard drive? Or are they stored in the software kind of thing? It's all very, very fascinating to me. So any stories that you have that open the door to that realm of things, I am interested to hear. So fill the comments with the stories of that if you have them. If you don't, let me know if you would like to have any other analyses of these sorts of things. I'm going to kind of continue on this strain of stuff as we go through October and the rest of the spooky season kind of thing, just to kind of keep on theme. But if there are any other true crime cases or YouTube drama, or I've also been breaking into analyzing TV shows and animated shows and talking about the nonverbals and why they do or don't work, anything like that, go ahead and let me know in the comments of this video. Hit subscribe, do all the different things if you want to. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.